There are 8 facets to our life for which we might create goals. However, one facet of our life is often neglected when we create goals for the new year, and that is our spiritual life. Today's guest on the Weekday Wisdom is going to talk a little bit about spiritual goals, what they are, and how to set them. Hi, this is Carma Spence, your legacy creation mentor and author of the award winning book, Public Speaking Superpowers. And in today's Weekday Wisdom, I thought I would bring on a special guest who is a fellow author and has just come out with his new book, The Band Director's Lessons About Life, Volume 1, Parables on Life's Performance Cycle. This author is named Donald Lee, and he is also a speaker, a musician, a teacher, band director, and an economist. He holds degrees in economics and education and has performed professionally as a musician and was a finalist in the 1995 World Championship of Public Speaking. He was a member of the 2013 Canadian Triathlon team, and he's taught band in several Alberta communities as well as international schools in Kuwait and Pakistan. Well traveled, huh? Donald recently retired from teaching full time and is really working on his new career as a writer and author, and thus his latest book. It is filled with modern day parables and stories inspired by his work as a teacher. So welcome to the podcast, Donald.
Thank you. It's an exciting delight to be here, Karma.
Oh, wonderful. So I was just mentioning your book, The Band Director's Lessons About Life. And this is your first book, right?
Yes, it is. I'm a new author, a young author. You can tell, right? The white hair is all dyed. It's my hairdresser that does
It's the
that.
trendy look. So you mentioned at some point when we were talking offline that it's a grand metaphor. What do you mean about that? And what is this grand metaphor that you talk about in your book?
Okay, so music is such a fantastic metaphor for our spiritual life, and each of the little 50 parables is its own metaphor. But the whole book is also a grand metaphor in that the book compares the normal performance cycle in a band program. I've been a band director for many, many years, to our cycle of spiritual growth in life. And so, for example, in a band program, we would normally, at the beginning of the school year, I roughly set out the performance schedule for the year. And well, maybe we're going to have a Halloween concert, or I'm in Canada, and the third week of November is Canada Music Week. So sometimes we've done a Canada Music Week concert, then a Christmas concert, and then festivals in the spring, and then a spring tour, and then a year-end concert. And then so that's part of my planning. And I'll set repertoire and goals for, the various levels of bands. And that's preparation. Then the next step is practice, where we work at, okay, we need to learn these notes, you got to extend your range, we need to learn, there's some knowledge, there's some skills that we need to develop in order to be able to perform well at the next concert. And that's the third step, is performance. And with every performance, of course, we're never perfect. Some things go well, some things go poorly, sometimes disastrous, right?
Absolutely.
And then afterwards, then we have a time of what I call reflection and redirection. We think about, oh, what went wrong? What did we do well? What did we do poorly? Why? What do we need to change in order to do better next time? And then the cycle starts over again. We'll prepare for the next concert. Okay, now we have tour coming up. You didn't do so well at the music festival, but we're going to play these pieces again. So on tour, we want to be able to learn it better. You made a mistake on that, and this part didn't work out well. And we're going to redirect our efforts to try to do better next time. And so the book is in those 4 parts. There's 4 parts of the book: preparation, practice, performance, and then reflection and redirection. And there's roughly a dozen parables in each section. So that's what I mean about a grand metaphor. And the subtitle of the book is 50 Parables on Life's Performance Cycle. Right? It's kind of you have to have the subtitle explained to you. I know it's a bit awkward.
So this is the beginning of the year. This is January.
Yeah.
And everybody's talking about setting their goals. Personally, I like to set my goals in December, but sometimes the process leaks over into January. So everyone's talking about SMART goals and vision boards, and most people, at least in the entrepreneurial space, are usually talking about their business goals or their career goals, and occasionally they'll talk about life goals. But as you and I talked about before, there are more than just those few facets of life. And one of the most important facets in, and I believe you agree with me on this, is the spiritual aspect. And I understand that you talk a little bit about how and why spirituals are important and why they might be overlooked. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you, Karma. I think most of us overlook spiritual goals, right? Is something that's tacked on after the fact. Usually we think, okay, well, we're going to set some financial goals or some, maybe some physical goals, weight loss. I've often had physical goals. I've been involved in sports of various kinds throughout my life. So, get my running times down or whatever. I did triathlon for quite a long time. So we had running, swimming, and biking time goals that we had, right? Okay, so we got to work on these, get my times down. And the older you get, the harder it is to get your times down.
Right.
So, we focus on those kind of physical type goals. And sometimes we get into kind of intellectual type goals and say, well, I want to read more about history because that's an interest to me. And I think it's a personal development thing that I want to do. And then, oh yeah, and like maybe we'll go to church on Sunday. It's always an afterthought. And yet, as I point out in my book, that we're spirit, mind, and body. And I use it in that way. I know that body, mind, spirit is, so common in the world today, but I think that's backwards. We're spirit first. So I put spirit, mind, and body. And if I could paraphrase the master teacher, he said, put your spiritual goals first, and then everything else will fall into place. But we're backwards usually. And so
Yeah.
in my book, one of the kind of underlying themes is, focus on your spiritual goals. Where are you going? And so when we use the metaphor, the band, the band performance cycle metaphor in our life, and look at the 4 sections in preparation for any goal, right? You're going to figure out, well, where am I now, and where do I want to go, and then what kind of a plan do I have to get there? Let me just compare. Well, no, I'll keep it with the music. I was going to use time goals in sports or something, but no, let me keep it on music. Okay. All right. So we have, it's January. We're working on festival music in our community. That happens in March, usually early March. So we got to rush. Okay. Now we got to get everybody moved up. There's some new notes you need to learn. There's some new terminology and some new musical techniques that you need to master and stuff. So we're scrambling to practice those. Okay, so we kind of said, well, we got to teach them to play a high F and a high G, and that's going to do the, So we set a plan. Okay, how are we going to get there? And then in band, most of our time is focused on practicing. In our spiritual life, and I make the point in the book too, it's really more that all 4 steps happen instantaneously in that ever-present moment of now, right? We're
Right.
constantly thinking, okay, I want to be more loving. And I just had an argument with my husband or my wife or something. That didn't work out very well, did it? Okay, so we're constantly, preparing, practicing, being more loving. Oh, shoot, the performance here didn't work out well. I had an argument. Why didn't I just let that go? I know he was hungry. Why didn't I let him eat supper first and then bring up that controversial subject or whatever, right? So we're constantly reflecting. But if we put our spiritual goals first and foremost in our life, then I think we will find other things fit into place. So much of my life, as everybody else's, the spiritual goals are last, and we're, I want to do this and I want to do that. And so many times we find like we're banging our head against the wall. This just isn't working. God, why aren't you helping me? I want to get this job and I can't even get my foot in the door. They're not returning my phone calls or whatever the situation might be. And in my own life, gradually, especially over the last couple of decades, I've noticed, all my plans just don't work out. And then when nothing works out and I'm in a position of desperation, all of a sudden, bang, a door opens. What? Like, how did that happen? Well, I mean, I've come to the point where I say, okay, thanks, God. Yeah, your plan was better than mine. Silly me. I should have listened earlier. So throughout my book, I have this theme that we need to still our bodies and our minds in order to try to connect with that divine within. And, from my kind of little bit of understanding, as far as I can see, every religion in the world has this sense that the divine resides within each one of us. It's
Hmm.
that's our soul, right?
Right.
And that if we want to listen to the divine or God or the universe or source or whatever you want to call it, then we need to be still, quiet, and kind of search our own soul for the direction, for those little nudges, right? That God is kind of pushed. God doesn't bang on the hood of our car and say, "Hey, stupid, turn left, turn left." No, God doesn't work that way, right?
He gave us free will for a reason.
That's right. That's right. Those little urging in our hearts, right? And we need to be quiet and listen to that and try to figure, okay, where are we going? Where do we really want to go? As far as our direction goes in life, what we should do, there's so many choices available to us these days, right? What are we good at? What do we like? What makes our heart sing,
Hmm.
right? And follow your heart. Because I think God is nudging us in that way. And so if we set our spiritual direction first in our life, then we can gradually start to set other goals, business goals, financial goals, whatever other goals we have in our lives. We can kind of start to set them. Okay, so if I'm going to be whatever your goals are, maybe more loving, maybe this physically abusive relationship that I'm in is going to have to come to an end, or maybe I'm going to have to quit picking arguments with people. Maybe I'm going to have to quit finding fault with people if I'm going to be more. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
if we set our spiritual goals, at least try. Right, that's
Right.
what a performance is like. We try. Some things go well, some things go poorly. So we constantly get to reflect. Say, well, maybe that's not where God is leading me. So many times in my life I've said, God, like make it more clear. I'm a little bit thick here, right? I'm not getting
Right.
the message. Where are you trying to lead me? Because I don't get it. But so it's a constant process of trying to connect, of trying to
Right.
get that find that spiritual direction in our lives.
Right. Now, formulating these spiritual goals, I think that's just as hard as trying to achieve them. I mean, in many religions, I mean, I know in like, because I'm Catholic, there's you go to church every Sunday, that would be a goal. Attend all the holy days of obligation, that would be a spiritual goal. But those seem so disconnected from who you are on a
So
day-to-day
external.
life. They're very external. And
Yeah.
so, how what are good examples of spiritual goals that would be, because in order to really attain a goal you have to have some sort of connection to it. At least
Yes.
that's my personal opinion, and I put that in my goal setting program, is that you need to be excited about that goal and excited about these things that are rules. It's hard to do that. Whereas when you're connected to a goal, to a spiritual goal, like maybe the goal may be to attend Sunday worship every Sunday,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But that's not really the goal that how you explain it to yourself,
You're right.
because you're doing
That's
that to achieve something else.
yeah.
So do you have any thoughts on how does one formulate a spiritual goal, and what are some good examples of said goals?
Yeah, absolutely. And all the things you've said, Karma, are are really would constitute the plan, not the goal itself, right?
Okay.
So, okay, I'm going to go to Sunday worship service at wherever I go. I'm going to go. That's going to be part of it, and that will be part of the plan. And because God gives us guidance through the readings and the sermons or homilies or whatever, the other people we meet, the opportunities that present themselves, all that kind of stuff. That definitely could be part of the plan. But since our spirit is within us, then spiritual goals are essentially within us, right?
Hmm.
And I'm also Catholic, so I mean I can relate to that. We have the sacraments, right? And like the standard definition of a sacrament is an outward sign of an inward grace,
Yes.
right? right? And
Right.
so you go to baptism. It's not that that water is going to make you holy. It's an outward sign of your own spiritual quest for holiness. Right now, as a baby, they don't get that, obviously, but but I
But
mean,
God puts it in them.
yeah, yeah, and as an adult, I mean, a lot of people are baptized and come to religion as adults. I mean, if you're baptized as an adult, then I hope at some point somebody's going to tell you, well, that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
kind of the idea there, and the same with the sacrament of marriage, right? I mean, the words that are said, the prayers that they don't make your commitment. Your public a marriage ceremony is an outward sign of that inward commitment that you are making to each other as a couple, right? So that
Exactly.
so the going to church, or they're outward signs of your inward kind of direction, right? Or you're
Okay.
in of something inside. So our goals are inside. We can look at. I like, Jesus made it so simple. I say this in my book too. Humans for the last 2,000 years have made it so complicated, but Jesus made it so simple. He said, remember in response to the question that I think it was a scribe asked him, "What's the most important commandment?" He said, "Well, the first one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul." And then he went on. He said, "And the second, of course, that's the first commandment out of the Ten Commandments, right?"
Right.
And then Jesus said, "And the second," and he picked something that's not one of the Ten Commandments. It's in the Old Testament, but it's not one of the Ten Commandments. He said, "And love your neighbor as yourself."
Mm.
Right? Those two
That's a hard
commandments.
one sometimes.
Oh yeah, and of course
And
then
and even
then
if they're a saint you live next door, sometimes it's hard because we don't love ourselves either.
yeah, so it's about love, isn't it? It's
Hmm.
love God, love yourself, love, and then the question came out, well, who is my neighbor, right? And then
Hmm.
Jesus told the famous parable about the Good Samaritan, right? The Samaritan people from Samaria, they were the most hated and
Right.
reviled people to the people in Judea, right? So even a Samaritan, yeah. So Jesus is saying everyone,
Everyone,
right?
yeah.
Everyone is your neighbor. So you love everyone, love God. It's about love. It's about love, guys. Right? That's the main thing. And that's within us. So,
So what would be an example of a
okay.
spiritual goal?
Okay. So one of my spiritual goals always is to be more loving. Okay. And part of my plan for doing that is I often pray. And I mentioned this in my book too, right? I'll pray and I'll ask that I be a vessel through which God's love flows into the world, that I be a lamp through which the light of God flows into the world. In essence, at least to a certain extent, in one way of understanding, right, the
Hmm.
spiritual thing, is that's what we're meant. I mean, in Christianity, we have this idea that we are the hands and feet of Christ,
Okay.
right? That we are the vessels through which God works in the world. Right? God doesn't have hands and feet. Jesus doesn't have, hands and feet like ours in the world. We are the hands and feet that are supposed to be doing that we're supposed to let that divine spirit or the universe or source, once again, whatever you want to call it, that we're supposed to let that flow through us and into the world. So that's one way that's kind of one of my common prayers. But for
So
everybody, you want to pick as spiritual goals, you want to pick whatever thing you most want to work on or you most think you need to work on, right?
mhm.
Maybe you would really like to have more of a sense of peace in your life. Well, then pray for that the peace of God, right? A famous prayer of Saint Francis, right? Like that I may be a vessel,
Yeah.
okay, for peace. I may be a lamp through which the light of peace shines into the world.
Right.
Pray for that. And then, of course, we need a plan. Okay, so how are you going to be more peaceful? Well, maybe wait, and I got a parable on this too, right? Put away your cell phones, right? Kids
Yeah.
with kids with cell phones in class, right? Put away your cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to put away the cell phone. Maybe we need to turn off the television. Maybe we're so bombarded constantly, every waking minute of our days, or we're just kind of visual and audio overstimulation. How can we listen to the quiet, the still small voice within when we got all this junk happening around us? So maybe
Exactly.
part of the plan right, to get peace is, cut some of that out.
Mm.
Maybe if it's only for half an hour a day, right? I'm going to get up half an hour earlier before the chaos erupts in the household. And I'm going to have a time of prayer and meditation. I'm not going to turn on any electronic devices yet, right?
Right.
Just keep some peace. So a spiritual goal is always something that is going to be inside us, whether it's love or peace or joy. Like how many of us really are joyful during our day, right?
Right.
Half the time we're miserable and complaining about stuff and whatever happens. Well, I mean, you're in sunny Southern California. Well, it's pretty sunny out here in Northern Alberta, but it was -35 degrees this morning. The car wouldn't start. Just when I went out, I got my car started. Then my wife said, "Oh, my car won't start. Can I use yours?" It messes up my day. All right, take my car. And I spent the next 2 hours trying to get her car started. And now she's off to get a new battery. You know how our days go, right? So it's hard to keep that peace and whatever. But yeah, the spiritual goal is always something about the inside of us that we need to focus on, and then set some plans to figure, okay, how are we going to help to produce that spiritual quality? The fruits of the Spirit, the seven fruits of the Spirit are a good place to start, right?
Right. It's interesting because when I think of spiritual goal, I might not, love, peace, and joy wouldn't spring to my mind in that box. They would, in my mind, they might come up in the life goal or, or personal in self-development goal. And what you just said really ties in with something that someone else I was talking to earlier today about how he defines the 8 facets of life. And in spiritual, he goes ethics, morality, and spirituality are all in that area. And so it seems to me that these spiritual goals would work for anyone, even those people who might not think they're spiritual, because there really are character goals. They're really about being a better person in the world, because I would assume that that's sort of what God wants for us anyway. So therefore,
Yeah,
it's a spiritual goal, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So,
you, can I interrupt you?
yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so I mean, we can certainly look at ethics and morality, and really, I mean, Jesus went on to make the point right in the previous passage that I referred to. Right, he said these two goals: love God and love everyone as much as you love yourself, which implies we should also love ourselves, not hate ourselves, right? Or you'll hate everybody, then you'll really
Right.
be miserable. So, and
Exactly.
then he went on to say, in those two commandments is all of the law and all of the prophets, the way he described it. Now, because the law and the prophets is usually how we define the Old Testament, which was for the Jews at that time the entirety of sacred writings that existed. So he said that all of sacred writings, all of the spiritual guidance God has ever given humanity is contained in that. Love God and love everyone.
Yeah.
So ethics and morality, right? I mean, you can easily think about it. Sometimes with my religion classes at school, I'd go through that and say, look, I mean, so if you really love your neighbor, obviously you wouldn't kill him, right? You wouldn't steal his stuff.
Right.
You wouldn't commit adultery with his wife, right? You wouldn't lie to him, like all of those things. So, and
Exactly.
all the rest of it. I mean, if you truly love other people, you don't need to worry about the little minutia of, well, I don't know. I mean, and the ethics of so and so says that it's okay to. Yeah, that's what got the Pharisees wrong. That's why Jesus was so hard on them. He says, you know what? You got all this stuff. You got all these laws that you follow that are written down. Again, you're stuck on the letter of the law, but you miss the spirit because you don't love.
Right.
If you loved, you wouldn't do those things you're doing, even though the letter of the law says you can't.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So yes, I mean, so if you really think about spiritual goals as those spiritual qualities within us, then that covers everything else. If you truly think about it.
Yeah, that's well put. If someone wanted to learn more about your book, grab a copy, or learn more about you, maybe working with you, where would they go?
Okay, my new author website, it's only a couple of months old. I'm putting things in, but other people have said it looks pretty good. Is easy to remember, www. Of course, that's where everything starts, cominghomespirit.com. And
Okay.
so Yeah, cominghomespirit.com. The theme of my website is that's our spiritual journey. All of us are on a spiritual journey back to God. And
Wonderfully put.
yeah, cominghomespirit.com. So you can connect. I get a weekly blog. You can sign up for my blog. You can check out other stuff on my website. You can see all the places where my book is available. But in short, at all your regular online stores can get it. It's at Amazon, it's at Barnes and Noble online, etc. And every bookstore can order it. It's
Yes.
available through Ingram, and that's the largest book distributor in the world. All of the bookstores order books from Ingram. So if you go into your local bookstore, you don't want to deal with an online say, this book, with a funny title by this guy, Donald Lee, and he's not Chinese. Donald Lee, it's called The Band Director's Lessons About Life. Can you get it? They can get it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today on the Weekday Wisdom.
It's my pleasure, Karma. All the best to you. God bless you.
All right, take care.